Good morning, Maine. Welcome to the Muddy Waters podcast, where I, Chuck Ellis, am your host. The Muddy Waters podcast exists, as I think you all know at this point, to help the people of Maine better understand what's going on in our state by interviewing people from around the state, business owners, politicians, reporters, whoever it might be, and talking about the things that are really happening that the mainstream media doesn't want you to know. Fortunately, we have a few other, we'll call them freedom fighters, with Maine X Community and the Unquirer, as well as the Maine Wire, being the main behemoth, trying to bring the truth of what's really happening that the mainstream media doesn't want you to tell. Unfortunately, the mainstream media has become a propaganda arm of the Democrat Party, and it's unfortunate, but it is true. And so, fortunately, today we have with us Jon Fetherston of said Maine Wire.
Good morning.
Morning, John. Well, it's interesting talking about kind of that whole narrative there of kind of why the Maine Wire exists and why it's so important, and kind of how they lead the charge is, I know some of the other people that have started doing stuff in more independent media were inspired to do so by the work that you guys are doing at the Maine Wire. So not only is the Maine Wire like leading the charge and being like the biggest force in really investigative in journalism, they're also inspiring independent journalism, and so we're very fortunate to have you here. Otherwise, we would not know so many of the crazy things that are going on in our state. Honestly, we'd rather not know, in a sense, right? Like, in the sense that, like, we'd rather those things weren't happening and that we didn't have to hear about the fact that they're happening. It's kind of this odd thing. I sometimes have guests on. I'm like, so thankful that you're here. Sad that you have to be here, but thankful that you're here to tell your story. Because I think the things that are happening that we wouldn't know about without the work that you guys are doing are just astounding.
Well, Chuck, I saw you up in Bangor. I saw you hanging out in an airplane hangar. I was there as well. And according to the mainstream media in Maine, we have an alleged fraud problem. We don't actually have a fraud problem. It's kind of weird. The Vice President of the United States of America flies all the way to Bangor, Maine. And New Center, Maine says, well, it's an alleged fraud problem. It's not an actual fraud problem. I mean, so, if we weren't reporting it, would anybody know about it? My words, an obnoxious cameraman from another legacy media, kind of snapped at me and my colleague Seamus, like, you guys are standing in our live shot. And I'm like, okay, I'm sorry, my apologies. If you ask me to move, I'll gladly move over. And he's like, what organization are you with? In a rare moment of me kind of like, I wouldn't say being unprofessional, but being uncharacteristically kind, as I always try to be. I was like, I'm the reason you're here today, guy. The Maine Wire is the reason why the Vice President of the United States is here, because, Maine has a fraud problem, and you guys have looked the other way and allowed this problem to grow. So lose the attitude, be a human being, ask me to step aside, and I'll be happy to step aside so I'm not in your live shot, because I don't want to be in your live shot. But, read the room, buddy. The Vice President of the United States is here in Maine because, it's his words, the Vice President's word, Maine might be the third most corrupt state in the country when it comes to fraud. So, yeah. But New Center, Maine, well, it's all alleged. It's, not proven. Yeah, a lot of it's been proven. It's been proven by Governor Janet Mills cutting off funding to Gateway Community Services. It's been proven by, the letter coming from the Mills administration to Paradise Residential. You've been cut off. It's been proven in so many different ways. The fact that Gateway is in front of the House Congressional Oversight Committee, that, Homeland Security went to Gateway Communities and said, hey, here, we're here to raid your offices. That's not alleged. It's all fact. It's all documented. Dr. Oz did an audit, his office did an audit on autism billing. 100% of the files pulled, not 10%, not 20%, not 50%, 100% of them had errors on them. You can't purposely, commit that much of a problem if there isn't a fraud problem. But the mainstream media said, well, what else you got, Mr. Vice President? So it's shocking to me, Chuck. It's just so shocking to me that the mainstream media is still covering from the Mills administration. Mills is just trying to run the clock out until she's out of office, and hoping that she doesn't get indicted for something.
Yeah, no, it is pretty astounding. And yes, I mean, from a technical legal standpoint, right, until it's proven in a court of law, it is alleged, absolutely. However, but there's so much evidence that proves that it's actually happening. It's like the Leering Center in Minnesota, right? Have they been arrested? Have they gone to jail? Have they had their day in court? No, but like there's a significant amount of evidence in the court of public opinion, and it looks very clearly like there's a lot of fraud, which has been corroborated by other sources. So like the reality is like yes, I mean things need to go to court, but some have, and the things that have come out of court like was the story that Vance shared, which was somebody who had done about $15 million in billing for interpretive services that she never conducted, right? And so like we know if that's happening once, it's happening a dozen times. Like if somebody is getting away with that, like other people are also getting away with that, right? And so the reality is it is a huge problem, and more importantly, like we don't hear anything from the people who are supposed to be policing it. That's the Mills administration, right? There's nothing, there's no public statements, there's no like once she made the decision to go ahead and do something, with that event, um with that, like I think they shut off funding to some of these organizations. Like this is a thing that the public knows about. Why are you not communicating about what happened?
Have you watched
Like
any of the Democrat gubernatorial debates, Chuck?
I sure have.
Have you did you enjoy any of their answers about questions about fraud in those debates?
um I you know
Said
I can't.
sarcastically by John.
Well,
Yeah. Because nobody's asked him about fraud in these debates.
I think I'm trying to think because I feel like I wasn't looking for that particular piece of information, but I do think there was a conversation about that. I do believe that Nirav Shah even might have had a comment suggesting that we do need to take a look at things and make sure. But like they're not concerned
The same
about
guy
it.
who says he's going to fight Trump on every step, though. That's the same guy
Sure.
who's now running ads on TV saying, I'm going to fight Trump on every step. So is he really going to combat fraud if he's running ads saying that, the Trump administration is bad and wrong?
I mean,
Seeing is believing, but
the truth is the Democrats are looking, or everybody that they're presenting is more of the same, if not worse, right? That like that's what you're looking at on the Democrat, because again, we all understand, and it's interesting because like I watch a lot of the Republican debates, and I've heard the Republican candidates talking for a year and a half. It feels like, I guess, more like a year, about like what they were going to do when they're elected, right? And what the issues are. And so the issues have been coming up, right? I've seen
Mhm.
heard the issues, and so it's been interesting to listen to the Democrats talk about the issues. What's interesting is like kind of the general premise is the problems that exist in our state exist because we're not taxing people enough. Now, they don't say that. Although they do actually, both Bellows and Troy Jackson talk about needing to double the millionaire's tax from 2% to 4%. Um, and so like they literally are saying people should pay more tax. Other people are saying everybody should pay their quote unquote fair share. I think the wealthy in this country pay like over 95 or whatever percent of the taxes. So I think I don't know, what's the fair share there? But either way,
The fair share is that there's no fraud in the system. The fair share is that people are treated equally, held to the same lawful standard. That's the fair share. I mean, this whole thing that you've got to,
yeah.
take more money from rich people, that's not fair.
Well,
It's anything but fair.
it's not fair, and it leads to economic disaster. These socialists, these communists, because that's essentially what they are. It's becoming much more difficult to see a difference between today's Democrat Party and the communist the socialist, or the communists, really, where like the problem with communism is it's or socialism is you get shared poverty. With capitalism, you are going to have winners and losers, but
Mhm.
overall a rising tide lifts all ships, and in
Mhm.
because of the fact that people are working and striving and trying to create things, we get better stuff, even the poor in our country are treated far better than the rich. Than the rich and than poor, not the rich and poor countries, but generally speaking, the poor in a capitalistic society are better off than far better off than the poor in socialist and in communist societies, and there's much less of them by comparison. And so, I mean,
Mhm.
communism, socialism is idiotic. It doesn't work. It's been proven over and over and over again, and they're trying to recreate it here. And again, they're still they're whether you're talking about education or you're talking about mental health or you're talking about I mean, really, just about anything. What you end up finding from them is they think we need to spend more money. We need to spend more money. We need to spend more money. With Angus King III being the most moderate, who essentially says, "Yes, we need to address that, but I don't want to make promises on the campaign trail that I can't keep." In other words, I'm not going to say that I'm going to do those things because it's going to cost a lot of money, and I want to give off the impression that we're going to try to address the budget, when in reality, like all Democrat governors, you're just going to get in there and you're going to do whatever the progressives in your party want you to do, essentially, and you're going to increase the budget as well. Maybe you won't increase it as much, but you're going to increase the budget, which means you're going to increase taxation. You're going to drive more businesses from the state of Maine and tank an already struggling Maine economy. So that's nice. That's what we get out of the Democrats.
All you need to know, Chuck, is that the rest of the country, people in the service industry aren't being taxed on their tips.
Yeah.
In the rest of the country, hardworking people aren't being taxed on their overtime. But in Maine, you are. And I'm actually surprised that none of the gubernatorial candidates on the Republican side have made a bigger issue out of it. This is a huge issue. Maine is run on tourism for the most part, right?
Yeah.
It's a service industry state. Bartenders and servers and barbacks and waitresses and hair salons and nail salons, they're all being taxed on their tips. Why is that not a bigger story? Why is that a bigger play? I mean, any any bartender or waitress out there, hey, the Democrats are sticking it to you. Pay attention, because if you go live anywhere else in the country, you're not paying taxes on that. It should be a huge issue. Should be anybody in the service industry should be mad about it.
Yeah, no, I agree, and I think the gubernatorial candidates have talked about it. The problem, John, is that
Talked about it, but not made a big issue of it. Yeah.
Well, there's only so much time that they have, and they have about 27 different issues that are huge issues.
True, very true.
It's like we can talk about energy all day long. As being probably one of the more significant. We'll have Matt Jacobson is going to come on, I believe, on Thursday to talk a bit about energy and specifically the Democrats' conversation.
He's the expert. Yep, he's the expert.
He knows a few things. He's got some good talking points and knows the detail. And so what's interesting, and part of the reason I was watching the Democrat debates was I wanted to prep for that. The more recent one, I want to prep for that. And like, again, one of the other things that I was saying, the Democrats, the problem is that we need to spend more money. That's the problem. The problem isn't how did we get here, right? This is the difference. If you want to look at the major difference between the Democrats and the Republicans, is that the Democrats are like, here's where we are. Here's the problem. Here's how we fix it. But they're not like, how do we get this problem, right? Where did this problem come from? This problem came from
usually the Democrats.
Well, this is exactly it. This problem came from Democrat policies. You get that on the right. We say, look, there are some issues, and here is what's leading to this problem, and this is why we have it, and this is what we're going to do to fix it. But on the Democrat side, it's like, well, let's just, we can't talk about that because we've been in charge for the past, really ultimately, if we're paying attention, most of the past 40 years. So if this is a problem, it's kind of our problem, but we can't admit that because it's hard to win an election.
Well, you just look at the schools in Maine. It's the perfect example, and it's the perfect analogy, is that Maine is one of the most expensive per student, charges in the state. I mean, excuse me, in the country. But look, where is Maine in the country when it comes to education? It's in the bottom 5 of the rankings. Money does not necessarily always solve problems. Yes, sometimes it can help, sometimes it can be very beneficial, but it does not ensure success, especially in government. And people need to just make, make their own decisions on it. But is anybody ecstatic about the level of their kids' education right now? I mean, some are probably, there hopefully there are kids getting a great education in school, but most are not because, look at the data. The data says a lot of kids can't read. Look at the data. A lot of teachers are stressed out. Look at the data, that we're not teaching reading, writing, and arithmetic anymore. We're teaching feelings and what flags should be displayed in your school. I mean, is and should that be expensive? No, that shouldn't be expensive. That should be a conversation. And who's right, who's wrong, I don't know. You decide who's right or who's wrong, but where's all the money going? Where's all the money going? And the money's going because I don't know. When I was in school, we had one principal, and you feared that principal. Now, sometimes you go to a school and there's a couple principals and a couple assistant principals and a couple deans and all this stuff. You know, I couldn't be a teacher. I don't, I'm not smart enough and don't have the bandwidth, and certainly don't have the patience. So I respect any teacher. But what I don't respect are all these, these administrators. You know, I was watching a Lewiston school committee meeting last night, and I'm just listening to the superintendent who's making, a lot of money, just going, man, it's all about you. It's all about you being the king. It's all about you having the last word. But I'm not hearing about the kids. Like, talk about the kids. Show me that you care about the kids, and maybe if the budget that you had presented a couple weeks ago hadn't been defeated at the polls, if it was focused on kids and it wasn't focused on you and protecting your programs and stuff, maybe the kids in Lewiston would be getting a better education. I don't know.
Well, yeah, I'm just tired of the excuses that comes from the Democrats, right? Like that's the bottom line. Is like, and these people, right? Like it's like, yeah, we need this, we need more money, and then we'll get better results. It's like, but we keep giving you more money, and we're not getting the results. So like, at some point, right, you have to deliver, or you get fired, like in some form or fashion. I mean, the school system and the superintendents and all that other kind, that the Maine Department of Education, that is a problem that needs to be addressed. And it has to be addressed locally for people at home. Like the reality is that is primarily going to be addressed by people running for school board and city council, people going to school board and city council meetings and speaking up and shaming these people who are being dishonest and not really representing the people that they're supposed to be serving, but are instead, serving the interests of basically the administrative class of the education system, people who want to profit off of our children, not people who want to ensure our children are given the best possible education, where they're actually prepared for life, right? They know reading, they know they can write, they can do math, they understand history, they understand science. These things are areas where the students
Understand
in these,
failure. Understand
that
failure.
too, absolutely. Learning and like, like, look, I failed English twice in high school, and I learned some lessons as a result of that caused me to do additional work. And I was going through a bad time actually in college, and I failed a couple classes in my sophomore year. And you learn from these things, and they
Mhm.
don't want kids to fail these days. And failing is actually important and necessary. I sometimes am reminded of this. The approach that's going on in the education system, be the movie Facing the Giants. There's well, not Facing the Giants, sorry, not that movie. What the heck, it's the Denzel Washington movie. I cannot remember off the top of my head. It's no, not coming to me. Anyway, the movie, in the movie, there's a scene where one of these kids it's about a school that gets integrated, and the football team is integrated with black and white students. And one of the black students makes a mistake, and like I think he's running back and he fumbles the ball, and the black coach, yells at him, and he goes like he's gonna walk off, and he's like upset, and he's basically like he's gonna quit. And so the white coach goes up to him and talks to him kindly and nicely, and gets him to go back in and play defense, and he makes a big play. And after the game, he goes to Denzel's character and says, Denzel's basically like, I want to talk about what happened with that guy, the white coach is like, you're welcome. And he's like, no, I wasn't going to thank you. Right. Once these kids get out there into the real world, they're not going to have somebody to hold their hand. So they need to fail, and they need to learn to cope on their own without being handheld, how to cope with difficult things. And instead, we have a system that tries to ensure that they never feel pain, which is
Right.
first of all is impossible, but also it's very poor training for life.
Yeah, and it probably leads to the mental health crisis that we have in this country right now with kids, you know, 15-year-old kid now grew up during COVID, doesn't trust anybody, has mental health issues, has been taught to be, fearful of women, fearful of government, fearful of law enforcement. Yeah, we've really done a bad disservice to this whole generation of kids that are going to be very soon going to be taking care of everybody in this country, because they're going to, age into the area of, responsibility. And what is this country going to look like because of it? You've got to learn, early in life to pick yourself up, dust yourself off, and learn, okay, don't do that again. I mean, we're all human. We all make mistakes. Nobody goes through life undefeated, but the schools want you to think that you do. And I don't think there's any bigger injustice to children than that. It's okay if you failed. It's okay if you're not good at that. You're going to find something else that you're good at. And, God forbid you grade, a test with a red pen. It might hurt somebody's feelings. Well, good. Try being a reporter for the Maine Wire. You get your feelings hurt every day.
Yeah, or just making any conservative comment in an online forum for a town, you just get attacked. It's like vultures. It's like the maybe piranhas might be a better response. There's a guy in the Westbrook Republicans who posted something talking about so like he's proposing $1 million off of, so the budget's increasing by like almost $3 million, I think, if I'm not wrong. And he's not saying that we remove all of that, which I'm like, I'm okay with removing all of that and being like, why are you? We've already given them 7-8% raises over the course of the last 4 or 5 years. I mean, the budget has gone from 42 million to 41 million in 2022, I believe, 2021, 2022, to about 57 million. And that which is a sizable increase in a very short period of time.
And what have the test results done in that same period?
Yeah, I mean, the middle school is 81 out of 91 in the state, to give you an example. And in a state that's over in the bottom 5 in the country. So, one of the worst schools in the country, is what we're getting for that, ultimately. And so, like, obviously that's a problem, and something needs to be done. And he's proposing, out of the 2 to 3 million of increases, to cut $1 million of that, which and he proposes it in a way that won't eliminate staff, won't eliminate teacher positions, and he just is getting attacked in social media for making that kind of recommendation. And people are basically like, well, you need to go to every single school board meeting in the history of time in order to be able to have an opinion on this. And it's like, like, why? Like, but this is the type of stuff that happens, is these people are rabid servants of the mission, of basically of the Democrat Party, which is what this is. Despite the fact that school board, city council stuff is supposed to be nonpartisan, it's very partisan. And this is part of a Democrat agenda focused on, indoctrinating children into the ideologies. They don't care about it. The truth is, they don't care about those elements of education. They care about creating mindless protesters who will do what they want when they want. And now the average person who's fighting that fight in the school board, city council, they may not completely understand what they're doing. They may think that they're fighting for something other than what they're fighting for, or maybe they buy into this idea that we just need, these are just required mandates. We have to spend this money. It's required. It's required. It's required. But whatever it is, like they're rabidly attacking someone who is presenting a different view, who is struggling, like many people, to be able to deal with the increasingly, heavy burden that is being levied by the middle upper class city councilors and school board members.
Yep. See it all the time. Yep. Yep.
Yeah. So anyway, well, before we came on, I think we were talking about going back to the Democrat, because I love to talk about the Democrats today. Anyway,
Yes.
but like you had mentioned, and I thought it was really interesting that Janet Mills has come out and is endorsing Hannah Pingree for governor. And my question is that good for Hannah or bad for Hannah?
Well, I don't think you should be surprised. Hannah Pingree worked in her administration for a while, and I think they've been colleagues for a long time. So in other words, in other news, water is wet. But I don't know. If you're running, because the ads that you're seeing on TV now and you're hearing on the radio, the Democrats are all trying to left each other. No, I'm more progressive. No, I'm more progressive. No, we're the exact same candidate, but I'm more progressive. So you're seeing all of that now, and you really have to look, and it's still kind of shocking to me. The Democrat Party said to Janet Mills, "We don't like you anymore." The Heritage Foundation came out and endorsed, Platner for the Senate campaign. The Democrat Party came out and, said, "Hey, we'd rather have, the guy with, questionable comments and a Nazi tattoo and horrible things that he says on Reddit." There was more stuff that came out today from another report came out today. We'd rather have that guy who says inappropriate things about African Americans and women than a two-term governor. So the Democrats don't even want Janet Mills. So is an endorsement from somebody that the Democrat Party doesn't want actually helpful? Or is it actually maybe another weight placed on the Pingree campaign? All news is good news, when it comes to publicity and stuff. But I don't think any of the other candidates are regretting that they didn't get that endorsement, because the Democrats have said we don't like Janet Mills. And it's funny. Republicans don't like Janet Mills. Democrats don't like Janet Mills. Nobody likes Janet Mills, and it's kind of stunning for a two-term governor to be that disliked by both parties.
It is very fascinating. It's like sometimes, the Democrats eat their own. I mean, Janet Mills has advanced their agenda like aggressively as governor of the state of Maine. Like she's done things that she promised she wouldn't do. She promised she wouldn't raise taxes. She promised she wouldn't. I don't know if wouldn't raise taxes, but wouldn't introduce new taxes. I think but either way, she promised that she wasn't going to increase your taxes in some form or fashion, and she did. But she also promised that she wouldn't make any changes in the 2022 gubernatorial election to the abortion policies. And then immediately, at her direction, they present a policy that advances the already existent kind of like culturally, like I think generally speaking, all Mainers, not all Mainers, but like 70 to 80% of Mainers agree that abortion beyond viability is not a good thing, right? That's a thing. Actually, nationwide, I think it's pretty well agreed there, which is why the viability standard is what the used to be determined by the Supreme Court. But here, and we essentially had that in Maine law already, and so with Roe versus Wade being overturned, I don't know why, because it didn't affect anything in Maine. They decided that they
Right.
had to respond by making sure that you can have an abortion all the way up until birth.
Well, I was going to
Despite
say it actually did have impacts in Maine, because now you can have
right,
an abortion all the way up to birth. So that it had a extremely negative attempt on it. But Mills's legacy is going to be that she grew MaineCare. Okay. Okay. You did grow MaineCare, and the hospitals have gone out of business, and getting a primary care doctor now is next to impossible. So you did do that, and JD Vance came to Maine to say, "Hey, you've got a huge problem in your MaineCare system." So that's her legacy number one. And her second legacy is, well, I think it's okay that boys are in girls' locker rooms. And so much that I condone it that I stood up to the president of the United States about it. That's her legacy. Is that a
Well,
good legacy?
don't forget. No, short version, but don't forget the energy prices, which have
Right.
gotten
Yep.
to the point one of the most expensive in the country, and most increase over the course. Like, I think our increase from was it 24 to 25 was like double the. I think it was 36% approximately, and the second highest was like 18%.
Right.
And just in 1 year, that kind of an increase. Um, yeah, I mean, it's because of bad policy and really, um, yeah, I don't know, like just blind adherence to a party, essentially, and this fake news idea of the climate crisis, and but also at the same time presenting solutions, quote unquote, that are not solutions, that are not addressing the issue. Now because we don't have cheap energy, the Democrats are like, well, we got to be careful about bringing in AI data centers because we can't afford the energy. And it's like, well, you made energy expensive, right? You created this problem.
But the data centers aren't coming here anyway because of the price of the electricity, because Mills has, doubled down on these green initiative deals. They're not coming here anyway. It's false saber rattling. Why would you bring an AI company to Maine? They're anti-business friendly.
Yeah.
They don't have, the workforce that you need. And most importantly, you can find energy costs, anywhere in the country that are cheaper than here. So it's just, once again, let's let's fight these AI companies so you don't see what's going on over here with fraud and corruption. That's all this is. I mean, it's just ridiculous. It really is. I mean, there's no other word for it. It's just ridiculous. Who's bringing an AI company here? You know, Lewiston had an opportunity to do it, and they shut it down before the guys could even finish their presentation. I love a negotiation. I love, hey, like, what about this? What about that? They didn't even counter. Like, find out, if this is a real fight, even. And they didn't even do that. It was bizarre to me. I mean, it's just totally bizarre to me.
Yeah.
Like, hold their feet
Yeah.
to the fire, you know? Like, why
One
wouldn't you hold their feet to the fire? So, but
100%. Doesn't make much sense to me. Yeah. I
no.
mean, negotiate, as I think as you've said before, this is an opportunity to negotiate. You want to come here? We got some demands. See what you can get out of it. But we're a state, and this is where I think I had John Eater on last week. He's a Republican,
Mhm.
former Green Party, former Democrat, but is a Republican who I think COVID really was where he turned. But um, he voted for the moratorium on data centers, and I was telling him, I was like, look, we're not at a place in a state where we can afford to turn away business, so let's not do that. Like, I mean, I you know there's an like I don't know that AI is good for humanity, if that makes sense. But it's here, and I don't know that there's any way to put the genie back in the bottle. So that's kind of where that's at. I think that it will eliminate jobs, but the reality is that's coming no matter what. Whether we have data centers here in the state of Maine and have money flowing into the state as a result of them, or we don't, AI is coming and it's taking away some jobs, creating others, and making it so that individual people can be more productive. But yeah, I don't know that how much of an impact us deciding not to have them in the state of Maine is going to have on whether or not data centers exist. Instead, it's probably going to mean that those data centers go into places like China and India and other places where it's already cheaper to do business.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, AI's coming if you like it or not. You know, did Henry Ford get pushback when he invented the assembly line? And did the assembly job, line take jobs away from people at a time? I mean, the business evolves, and You could make the case that Ford's one of the only two motor vehicle companies in the history of the entire world that hasn't gone bankrupt. So I don't know. I mean, either my point is you either embrace technology or you get run over by it. But I don't understand a government that doesn't embrace all business. Like once again, we talked about the tax on tips. We
Yeah.
look at the growth in Maine. It's it's a historical feat. It's legendary. Like there is no growth. How can that be? I mean, like how hard does government have to work to accomplish something like that? That's not done by happenstance. That's done by design. It's tear it down and ruin it. I mean, that's we were talking earlier before, like, what's Mills's legacy? Legacy is that your state didn't grow at all. Your state didn't prosper at all. But elect my person, Hannah Pingree, because I think she's going to continue to do what I did. I mean, like I said, is that a
Yeah.
burden placed on Hannah Pingree? Like it's just mind-boggling that more people aren't paying attention to this stuff. But
Well, that's that's why I just am like, I think that's not good for Hannah Pingree, because like as
no,
like one of the things that I had been saying, I think around the time that Janet Mills, or even leading up to when Janet Mills stopped her campaign, is that you have every single Republican in the state of Maine, every Republican who's running for office in Maine is running against Janet Mills' record.
Mhm.
How can it be good to have an endorsement from that person?
Probably can't be. But can we talk about my most favorite, least favorite topic?
Sure.
Graham Platner. How did you see the comments that were
Uh,
released today about Graham Platner?
yeah, I don't even know that I want to read them, but
Yeah, I mean, we've got to
um,
walk a fine line of even how we relay them, but how is this guy, the presumptive nominee,
he did some
to
pretty
be?
weird stuff in porta potties, I can tell you that.
Yeah, that's a classy way of saying it, Chuck. He does weird stuff in porta potties. He doesn't think black people tip. He thinks cops are bad. He thinks lobstermen are, you know, bad people as well. How is this guy the presumptive nominee? And now, granted, everybody can change, everybody can get better, everybody can do better. But what I say it all the time: when people tell you who they are, listen to them. This is who he is, and this is the guy that you want to send to Washington. I will never tell you that all Democrats are bad. Not all. But this is a bad Democrat. Like, you don't want this guy in your United States Senate. And nothing he has said, the only thing that he has said that is true is his tattoo. His tattoo was a Nazi tattoo, and that's the only thing he said. There's, people, his father lent him the money to buy his house. Okay, some people will say, hey, that's a good father, that's a nice father. I will tell you that, like helping your son and condoning your son are two different things. And the big thing during the campaign is, hey, I'm going overseas because healthcare is cheaper and I can, hopefully get my wife pregnant overseas. Well, if your dad's paying for it, why do you care how much it costs? Like nothing he ever says is 100% accurate. So how is this guy the Democrats, choice? How is this guy the guy?
I,
Explain it to me.
it,
Explain. I mean, none of it makes any sense. In years gone by, this guy would have been laughed to the curb a long time ago. And I,
yeah.
I don't think he wins. I've said it for months. I don't think he wins. I think, Mainers are going to see right through all of this. And yes, he had a momentum right out of the gate, but it's not about me. But if you can't answer my question about gun violence in Lewiston, you're not ready for prime time. I mean, it was a softball question. Hey, Graham Platner, another kid got shot in Lewiston today. Do you have any comments? And rather just stop and say gun violence is horrible and we need to do better, he just continues to walk by. If you don't have the courage to answer that question, you're not ready to go to Washington, D.C. You're just not. You're not, even if you don't like the news outlet asking the question, it's pretty much a softball question. And you have to, when you're a United States senator, you have to answer those tough questions. And that wasn't even a tough question. So he's not ready for prime time. He's just not.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I don't. It blows my mind that we're at a place where a guy who, what's interesting is like when I started engaging in like considering going into politics, like I was like, um, you know, you start to look back at your life and think, is there anything that somebody could dig up on me? Because we all have
Yes,
mistakes
yes.
that we made and
Anybody
things
can
that
have anything dug
right,
up on them.
right,
Yep,
right.
yep, yeah.
Exactly. So it's like, what are the mistakes that I made in the past that may come up? And like the idea that I was worried about some of the little things that I was worried about, given what apparently is appropriate and acceptable by the Democrats, I it just blows my mind that I was even in slightly worried, given the stuff that he's you know
Yeah, yep. Like I
said. I
said,
mean,
the only
he's
truthful
admitted that
thing
he said
about him
these
is
things.
his Nazi tattoo.
Yeah,
You know,
yeah,
Janet, Susan Collins sent me to war. No, she didn't.
right,
No, she didn't. She voted to send people to war before you even enlisted, and you enlisted twice. Like that is not Susan Collins sending you to war. The war was already going on, and then you enlisted. So how is that Susan Collins
right.
doing? It makes for a great campaign ad. It makes for a great soundbite, but it's not factual.
Yeah,
So
yeah. We just have to put our hope and faith and trust in the Maine people to actually do a little bit of. They don't have to do much. Just do some research. Click
yep.
a couple links, follow some stuff, see what this guy's said and done, and yeah, I just think, yeah, and the whole going over to the other country to try to get his wife pregnant business was a 100. It's kind of funny because he labeled it as a taking a break from the campaign and or suspending his campaign. It's like this is the campaign. I mean, I had some people on the Republican side that were like excited. I was like, "What are you talking about? This is the campaign. This is not. He's not. He's not stopping campaigning. He's campaigning by." Doing this thing that the 100% point of it is to highlight the high cost of healthcare in Maine, in America, right? And yeah, it's not at all about like him doing a family thing.
No, no.
Yeah,
He wants to fight the oligarchy. Well, he is the oligarchy.
right.
He grew up a rich kid. He grew up in a life of means. Uh, he is the oligarchy. So it's just amazing to me that he can sit there and base stuff that's not on facts. But here we are.
Yeah. Well, uh, thank you once again, John. I know you got to get off to other things and go out there and do some more investigating. So I appreciate what you do, and appreciate you taking the time to come on.
Always a pleasure. Good to see you.
Right. Thank you all. We'll see you back here tomorrow. I believe, if I'm not mistaken, we're going to be talking about AI with a guy by the name of Justin Danorama. See you then.
Oh wow.